Episode 57 CG January 23, 2025 UK Clean Air Night, and United States Polluting Executive Orders. In Episode 57 CG1, How Can Trump Harm Us Environmentally? 2A Trump Executive Orders Supporting Pollution, 2B Wind Power Challenge, 2C Chemical Safety Challenge, 2D Electric Vehicle Challenge, 2E Withdrawal from Paris Accords, 2F Kennedy Jr. Trump Nomination, 3 UK Clean Air Night, Main Content 1. How can Trump harm us environmentally? View of the editor of RAWSEP Let Me count the ways 1A Greed Trump can approach issuing executive orders that roll back Biden-era environmental regulations from Greed Trump. Can count how much money fossil fuel companies can gain from rollback of environmental regulations without counting the costs to human health and the cost of hastening climate change. 1B Dealership Trump can approach rollback of Biden-era environmental regulations from narcissism. Trump hopes to count how many times he makes a deal with fossil fuel companies which he will be proud of despite costs to human health and cost of hastening climate change. This second reason, 1B for Trump actions which could be narcissism related to his pride in making the art of the deal, was prompted by the realization by the editor of RAWSEP that Trump was not immediately able to end the Russian aggression against Ukraine on day one of the Trump presidency. Trump was not able to make an artful deal with Russia on day one. Trump will probably have to appeal to Putin narcissism and pride in making the art of the deal to end the Russian war of aggression in Ukraine. But does Putin have the same narcissistic needs? As Trump 1C, for simplicity's sake, the editor of RAWSEP would rather simply ascribe only monetary considerations for Trump actions interfering in the cause of Ukraine independence from Russia, because then Trump actions could be somewhat blocked by money still successfully funneled into Ukraine, allowing Ukraine time to win the war against Russian aggression. If Ukraine wins the war against Russia, the surrounding NATO countries will also be saved and will not fall to Russia, and the United States will be saved in the long run, and United States national security will be preserved against Russian aggression in the long term. The editor of RAWSEP thinks that Trump is not thinking in the long term. 1C monetary gain from Russia winning the war also helps Trump in the short term monetarily somehow, but complicating this. 1C a Trump deal with Russia at the expense of the free world helps Trump in the short term somehow monetarily in a way that the editor of RAWSEP does not completely understand. But also 1D a Trump deal with Russia at the expense of the free world helps Trump believe narcissistically that he has made an art of a deal with Russia. Back to 1D. Compared to 1B, as with Trump continuing negotiation with Russia, Trump negotiating with fossil fuel companies, preliminarily beginning with rolling back environmental regulations, must give Trump a feeling that he is making an art of a deal with fossil fuel companies, which may be the Trump's psychological motivation even above a Trump psychological need to succeed monetarily. RAWSEP View Current news reports are about Russia actually negotiating with China about their mutual affairs of state, rather than with Trump right now. So this need for Trump to negotiate with Putin may be thwarted despite Trump attempting to lay the groundwork for negotiation with Russia around Russia aggression against Ukraine, and Trump may be blowing a possible art of the deal with Russia with impatience. The latest headline in the New York Times on the subject is in rare criticism. Trump says Putin is destroying Russia. President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia praised Trump's second inauguration, but the American leader did not return the compliment. To a United States, the president signed many executive orders. RAWSEP View Trump signed an executive order against any undue burden on biofuels. RAWSEP View is that biofuels are dirty fuels, and biofuels should be replaced by the truly clean energy sources of wind, solar, and geothermal. Wood could be considered a biofuel, and wood burning emits 2.8 times the CO2 and PM 2.5 as another dirty energy source. Coal also mentioned as an energy source to be protected by a Trump directive. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, January 21, 2025. President Trump on Monday issued executive orders on the subject of energy and the environment. Withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement, the pact among almost all nations to fight climate change. Declare a national energy emergency, a first in U.S. history, which could unlock new powers to suspend certain environmental rules or expedite permitting of certain mining projects. Attempt to reverse Biden's ban on offshore drilling for 625 million acres of federal waters. Begin the repeal of Biden-era regulations on tailpipe pollution from cars and light trucks, which have encouraged automakers to manufacture more electric vehicles. Restart reviews of new export terminals for liquefied natural gas, which Biden administration had paused. Halt the leasing of federal waters for offshore wind farms. Review all federal regulations that impose an undue burden on the development or use of a variety of energy sources, particularly coal, oil, natural gas, nuclear power, hydropower, and biofuels. Withdraw from the World Health Organization. 2B United States in a sweeping order. Trump halted federal approvals for new wind farms in a move that could affect projects on land and in the ocean. RAWSEP View is Trump standing in the way of wind power development only because it is a competitor of fossil fuels. Wind power is clean energy compared to fossil fuel energy, but that does not seem to be a Trump consideration. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, January 21, 2025. Trump signed a sweeping executive order that could block not just new offshore wind farms in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, but potentially many smaller wind farms on federal land and even on private property across the country. The order would halt all leasing of federal lands and waters for new wind farms, pending a fresh government review of the industry. It also directs federal agencies to stop issuing permits for all wind farms anywhere in the country. The order does not call for a freeze on wind projects that are already under construction. Trump directed terminating or amending leases already issued. The moves could cripple the U.S. wind industry, which provides 10% of the nation's electricity and is a major source of power in Republican-led states like Iowa, Oklahoma, and Texas. The wind industry currently has nearly 40 gigawatts worth of projects, enough to power tens of millions of homes under development in the Atlantic Ocean and in states like Wyoming, Montana, and North Dakota. The Biden administration approved permits for 11 commercial-scale wind farms along the Atlantic coast. 5 of those are under construction, and 1 has been completed. Wind power remains one of the fastest-growing sources of electricity in the United States. Many wind companies are now facing delays in securing connections to the grid, as well as opposition from rural communities worried about disruptions from new turbines the size of skyscrapers. The United States has not completed large offshore wind farms. Compared with many such projects in Europe, Trump could try to undo leases and projects already approved by the Biden administration. The Biden administration had been defending wind projects projects that are facing legal challenges from local opponents, including Revolution Wind and South Fork, near Rhode Island, the Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Project, and the Maryland Offshore Wind Project, it is unlikely the Trump administration defend those projects in court. Many offshore wind projects have been approved or are close to approval after undergoing years of reviews. 2C United States. 2 chemical industry officials expected to help oversee EPA chemical rules. RAWSEP View chemical restrictions are usually implemented as a safety measure to protect human health. The chemical industry usually fights restrictions because they place profit above human safety and human health. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, January 22, 2025. A former chemical industry executive who fought against stronger regulations under the first Trump administration is returning to take critical roles at the Environmental Protection Agency, raising concerns of corporate influence on chemical safety regulations. Nancy B. Beck, a toxicologist and former executive at the American Chemistry Council, the industry's main trade group, is set to reprise a role helping to oversee chemical policy. Similar to the one she held from 2017 to 2021, the Chemistry Council represents dozens of chemical companies and major manufacturers. Dr. Beck is credited with leading a wide-ranging pushback against chemical regulations during the first Trump administration, as well as what a subsequent internal investigation described as political interference in agency science and policymaking. She rewrote rules, for example, that made it harder to track the health consequences of a forever chemical linked to cancer and therefore to regulate it. She also helped scale back proposed bans on other substances like asbestos and methylene chloride, a harmful chemical found in paint thinners. Dr. Beck is expected to be joined by Lynn and DeCleva, who also worked for the American Chemistry Council, who is set to return to a role helping to oversee new chemicals as Deputy Assistant Administrator. 2D United States. Trump's Order 2 NDV subsidies draws pushback and doubt automakers, and even some Republicans may fight to preserve funds. Environmental activists will likely sue. Some experts said that some changes may not survive legal challenges. RAWSEP View, like indoor residential wood-burning fossil fuel-burning cars pollute unnecessarily, since electric cars, if charged from smart electric grids powered by clean energy of wind, solar, and geothermal, will emit few or no polluting emissions, such as PM 2.5. RAWSEP top excerpt from the article below. An executive order entitled Unleashing American Energy and signed by Trump on Monday instructs federal agencies to immediately pause disbursement of funds allocated by Congress that were part of the Biden effort to push the auto industry toward vehicles with no tailpipe emissions. Among other things, the funds helped states to install fast chargers along major highways. Biden's main climate law, the Inflation Reduction Act, also provided tax credits of up to $7,500 for buyers of new electric vehicles and $4,000 to buyers of used models. The credits effectively made the cost of buying some electric cars roughly on par with prices for cars with gasoline or diesel engines. RAWSEP View about an order that would increase emissions from United States automobiles. Trump also rescinded an aspirational Biden executive order that called for 50% of new vehicles sold in 2030 to be fully electric plug-in hybrids or vehicles that run on hydrogen fuel cells. RAWSEP View about an order that would increase emissions in California, and Trump said the administration would seek to revoke California's authority to establish air quality standards that are stricter than federal rules that would have a broad effect. California is aiming for 100% of new car sales to be electric by 2035, and some of its standards are copied by at least 17 other states. RAWSEP View about an order that would lessen demand for electric vehicles and so increase emissions if demand for electric vehicles flags as it has in other countries like Germany that cut incentives. RAWSEP View of why people will still buy electric vehicles. Ultimately, individuals and families will decide what cars they buy. Electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids are gaining market share, not only because of subsidies, but also because they offer rapid acceleration and lower fuel costs. RAWSEP View of what could stymie some Trump executive orders. Republicans wanting to keep electric car incentives that benefit Republican districts falling behind China in electric vehicle manufacturing. Federal rules are hard to repeal. New regulations require comment from the public and could engender lawsuits. Loan agreements to electric car manufacturers are already in effect. Tesla sales and profits will be affected negatively like any other electric car manufacturer. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, January 21, 2025. If Trump has his way, the auto industry's transition to electric vehicles will soon slam into reverse. He will erase tax credits for electric vehicle purchases, federal grants for chargers and subsidies, and loans to help retool assembly lines and build battery factories. Biden's multi-billion-dollar program to address climate change was cast by Republicans as a campaign to ban gasoline cars. The orders present a challenge to automakers that have invested billions of dollars in electric vehicles, in part because the Biden administration encouraged them to. Some of the orders appear to bypass Congress or federal rule-making procedures, making them vulnerable to lawsuits and even Republican resistance. The orders could cause U.S. car makers to fall behind. Already 50% of car sales in China are electric or plug-in hybrids, and Chinese automakers like BYD are selling more cars around the world. United States car makers could be left with costly underused electric vehicle and battery factories. Federal funding for EV and battery manufacturing will be harder to access. The Department of Energy has agreed to lend billions to car makers like Rivian, which will receive $6 billion for a factory near Atlanta to produce electric sport utility vehicles. The loan agreements are binding contracts. Much of the money has flowed to congressional districts in states like Georgia, Ohio, South Carolina, and Tennessee, where Republicans dominate local politics. Tesla accounts for slightly less than half the electric cars sold in the United States, and almost all its vehicles qualify for $7,500 tax credits. 4 of the 16 cars and trucks that can be purchased with the help of that tax break are made by Tesla. GM is the only automaker that has more eligible models at 5. No other company has more than 2 qualifying vehicles. 2E Trump's Paris withdrawal is grimmer this time. The New York Times. RAWSEP View. Although the Paris Accord seemed to accept the scientifically debunked concept of carbon neutrality of wood burning, and so accept that emissions from wood burning can be ignored when counting if a nation is meeting its climate goals of reducing emissions. If in the future wood-burning emissions are counted by all nations, then the Trumpian withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accords will be seen indeed as climate justice delayed and climate justice denied. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission. Particulates, a 501c3 non-profit organization, January 22, 2025. 8 years ago, when Trump made a show of exiting Paris, it caused worldwide backlash. The global climate equivalent of the liberal resistance, climate protesters, sympathetic prime ministers and presidents and legislators, entrepreneurs in the last 10 years who understood the urgency of action clearly enough to see it as a financial opportunity too. There are not signs large-scale protest movements adding adherents and gaining steam. Few major global leaders today would make decarbonization a core goal of economic development. No single country in the world is decarbonizing in line with ambitious goals of the Paris Agreement. The agreement was the culmination of an effort beginning in 1992 and is a throwback tribute to the liberal international order. The most important worldwide development of 2024 is the collapse of global cooperation and multilateralism in favor of the law of the jungle, and might makes right. 2F Kennedy Jr. Trump nomination threatens public health through Kennedy Jr. scientifically unfounded vax skepticism, which has the same outcomes as allowing indoor residential wood burning to continue. United States Trump nominee Kennedy Jr., the Trump pick to be health secretary, is keeping his financial stake in major litigation against Merck over a widely used vaccine given to young people, according to ethics records made public Wednesday in court documents. RAWSEP View. There is now discussion about whether Kennedy Jr. has an unethical financial conflict of interest ahead of hearings on the Kennedy Jr. nomination. Kennedy Jr. is on the side of vax skepticism, of course, in ongoing courtroom maneuvering. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission. Particulates, a 501c3 non-profit organization, the New York Times, January 22, 2025. That conflict of interest could raise questions for lawmakers as Kennedy Jr. aims to run agencies that regulate the drug maker. The ethics record said Kennedy Jr. would continue to collect fees for cases in which he referred clients to a law firm suing Merck over Gardasil, a vaccine that protects against the human papillomavirus HPV administered to adolescents to prevent cervical and other cancers later in life. The arrangement has earned Kennedy, one of the nation's fiercest vaccine critics, more than $2.5 million in recent years. The first of lawsuits claiming that young people were harmed by the vaccine is on trial. In Los Angeles Superior Court, Kennedy was paid $856,000 in 2024 and $1.6 million in 2023. Agreements like the one submitted by Kennedy and signed by the Office of Government Ethics are based on criminal laws that prevent federal officials from self-dealing and regulations guarding against the appearance of conflicts of interest. On January 21, 2025, Senator Crapo, finance chairman, said delay in receiving documents meant the committee will not hold a hearing for Kennedy Jr. next week, as Crapo had hoped. It is unclear whether the release of the forms will change that. 3 UK Clean Air Night from the Clean Air Night website on Clean Air Night, January 22, 2024. If you can smell wood burning, you are breathing in harmful air pollution. Wood burning smoke contains fine particle air pollution PM 2.5, which enters your bloodstream when inhaled and causes heart and lung disease, diabetes, and dementia. Burning wood is the most polluting way to heat your home. Recent research reveals that even homes using newer eco-design wood burners are 3 times more polluted than those without. Learn more about the health harms of wood burning this Clean Air Night, January 22, 2025. Get involved by learning the facts about wood burning and how it harms your health and the planet. Then share what you learn with your family, friends, and community to spark conversations about the harms of wood burning and protect everyone's health.